Okay, friends, heavy topic on the Build Show today. We're going to be looking at two houses in particular that survived the fires out in LA, and I want to look critically and really see if we can understand together why these houses survived such a horrific event. Before I jump into that, though, let me pause and say, look, if you're in any way connected, if you're watching this from LA or California, if you know somebody, this has been absolutely horrible. It reminds me and the rest of the country about the Lahaina fires that happened last August. Absolute massive loss of life. And just, I mean, the images that I saw on 60 Minutes, I mean, it looked like the fires of hell raging down the streets. It continues to be terrible. I'm seeing over 12,000 houses lost in LA, and the latest count that I heard was like 75 people have lost their lives. Lahaina, 101 confirmed deaths, thousands of houses lost. People are just now starting to rebuild in Lahaina. And so I don't want to make light of the tragedy, but I do want you, especially builder friends across the country that are in Texas like me or in Rhode Island or wherever, non-wildfire zones, or maybe you're in wildfire zones. I want us to use this to learn something and to take it back to our job sites today, because you may be building a house that could be in a wildfire urban interface soon or already building it. And I think that we need to look critically at what happened there and see if there's any takeaways. But I don't want to minimize the fact that somebody in that fire zone could have really literally done just about everything right. And you put a blowtorch on a wood building and we're going to have problems. And of course, there's going to be people that are going to say, look, we should build with concrete or we should build with, whatever. And that may be part of the solution. But we're in America. We've been building with wood for years, and we can actually build a very fire-resistant house out of wood if we do some things right. But again, 100-mile-an-hour winds. If this was a hurricane, we'd call this a Category 5. I mean, this is Katrina, right? I mean, this is unprecedented. Blowtorches was the word I heard over and over on the 60 Minutes report. Actually, let's watch just a minute or so of the 60 Minutes report, because I want to show the winds and the embers in particular, and then we're going to look at that in comparison to these houses. So let's do that real quick.
The inferno and a dazed Calvin family sifting through the ruins of their homes and their lives.
This is unreal. Oh my God.
Zaire Calvin and his family have called.
Oh man, it's heartbreaking to see him in that situation. I know all of us feel the same way. Let's fast forward a little bit in the story though, because I think this section coming up here where they're talking about the devil winds and showing some footage, this is what I want to show, and then we're going to show those two houses.
He told us the devil winds hurled embers far ahead of the fire, like snowfall from hell.
I think we've gotten the gist here. There's obviously a lot more to watch. Amazing job by 60 Minutes. I thought they did a really nice job covering this horrible story. But let's look at a Cal Fire video. I've been looking at some resources. One thing that I want you to take away from this video is actually a few different resources, really three in particular. We're going to get to those in a second. But I want you to watch just quickly this Cal Fire demo. And what they've got set up here is two test houses. I'll actually start playing while we're talking here. Two test houses. The one on the left is really kind of standard construction. It looks like wood, some type of wood siding, standard construction, normal mulch bed. The house on the right, I suspect, is probably like a James Hardie fiber cement or Allura fiber cement. And notice that there's a rock bed around, and also look specifically at the fence types. The one on the left has a wood fence. The one on the right, an open metal fence, non-combustible. So basically the house on the right has a 5-foot defensible space around the house. And you notice all they did was kind of light the mulch a little bit, and then the winds, and then obviously these fans are not blowing 100-mile-an-hour winds. This is not the same as the video we saw a second ago. But check out that elapsed timer. We're talking 12 minutes until that fence is a charred rubble. And here at 13 minutes, the house is basically absolutely gone, right? We still have some studs that are burning because they're a thicker wood, but that's it. The house on the right, on the other hand, appears to be basically untouched, and it was the same type of fire. The difference was the defensible space. Okay, now, what we've been thinking about and wanting for, or waiting for, let's look at these two houses. One of them, crazy enough, was Tom Hanks's personal home. We all know and love this actor. And this is an image of his house. And it looks to me like there were some other houses that survived potentially as well. It's kind of hard to tell what's happening over here on the right, but this house behind, absolutely charred. And I don't know what's happening with the wind in this area. It looks to me like Tom is downhill from some fire, and every report that I heard said that the fire and the wind was running downhill, which is a little different, right? Most of the time the wind comes from the coast and up, and these were like 70, 60, 80, 100-mile-an-hour winds coming downhill. Couple things at Tom's house, though. Look at this. Pool and hardscape around the house, so some defensible space. Looks to be a metal roof here and a flat roof here, possibly with a ballast. It's a little hard to tell from this jicky photo, but you know what a ballast is. It's where you do let's say a TPO or a PVC roof, maybe a Kemper roof. You put some type of rock on top of it, and the rock keeps the UV rays off the roof membrane, makes it last a lot longer. Well, that rock is also non-combustible. And in general, a lot of the flat roofs, let's say a PVC roof, you can get a Class A, no problem, which is the highest fire rating. The other thing that you're going to notice on Tom's house, there's no traditional, attic space. It looks to be a contemporary, relatively flat roof. So my guess is there's no soffit vents around this house. It looks to be hardly any overhangs, and kind of a green lawn on that downhill side. On the uphill side, it looks like there's a concrete barrier maybe holding back a hillside. Hard to say exactly, but he's got some defensible space. He doesn't appear to have any soffit vents, which would let in some embers. And again, metal and probably other Class A roofs. Here's an even more striking image, though. And this one is what a friend actually sent to me on X and said, check this out. Have you seen this? Brand new house. I think it's actually 6 months old, next to an absolute charred house, and it appears everything around totally gone. Interestingly enough, this post from this architect and builder, I did some digging into him, this guy Greg Chasen, and crazy enough, he commented on an Instagram post I put up yesterday. Look at his wording for this. No words really, just a horror show. Some of the design choices we made have helped, but we were also very lucky. Well said, Greg. I think that's absolutely true. I kind of dug into the comments to see what he said and what people said about the house. But crazy enough, I found a Reddit thread, and someone found a news report with him. Let's watch a minute of this.
Why is this the last house standing?
Well, there's a reason. Architect Greg Chasen built it just 6 months ago. He came by to see how it fared in the inferno.
The side is stucco, which serves as a fire block on the sidewalls here, so that helped a lot. We also used a metal roof, steel roof with special underlayment to protect it, designed to protect it against fire.
Check out the burned out car on the left. You can see it on the Twitter photo. This car is absolutely destroyed on the left-hand side. It caught fire. And see that little silver streak right there? That's actually aluminum that melted from some part on the car. Maybe the rims, I can't remember. There was a bunch of speculation online about that. Aluminum melts at 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit. So when that car was burning, in that vicinity was 1,200 degrees. But back to that defensible space, Greg specifically talks about how there's really a total desert, arid scaping around the whole house. So we've got this full 5-foot clear. The other thing he did that really saved the day, especially from that car burning, this is a concrete wall. That's not just a regular fence. It's not even a metal fence. That's a concrete wall. Now there is some metal fencing, it looks like, at the man gate and the driveway, but everything else is short. It appears to be maybe a 4-foot tall perimeter wall, but that concrete wall saved for sure this part of the house from the heat. Also, the fence that's over here, metal fence again, not wood. And he specifically mentions in one of the stories that the homeowner was smart enough to go, hey, anything that's outside that's near the house that could combust needs to get away. For instance, these trash cans got shoved to the front of the lot. Those could have absolutely ignited, and if they were right next to the house, they could have caught fire. I've seen some speculation on what the siding is. It actually looks and appears to me to be wood siding. I'm not totally sure. Maybe it's a aluminum siding that looks like wood, but honestly, it could have been real wood with this defensible space and not necessarily caught fire. The other thing you're going to notice is look at the Monopoly style framing going on here. There's no soffits, there's no eaves, there's no overhangs, and there's no ventilation here too. This is a fully conditioned attic space, it appears, and Greg actually mentioned that at some point that I saw online. So there's nothing to soak in or bring in embers into an attic and burn. Fascinating house. I believe that I saw online that he specifically used tempered glass on the house for fire resistance. There is a benefit to going to tempered, and believe it or not, there is some glass that has some type of fire rating, which is probably a laminated tempered as well. I don't know for sure, but I guess that these are either aluminum windows or they're probably wood with an aluminum coating on the outside, an aluminum cladding, I should say, on the outside. So nothing to catch fire there, nothing ignitable. The other thing that we need to think about with windows is, you know, if this house had vinyl windows, the glass might survive, but the vinyl would melt, the window would fall out, and then the house would be gone. Any house in this area that had vinyl windows, they would have melted like that. The glass would have fallen out, and the house is lost. It appears to be a metal garage door that was down too, and all the windows obviously need to be closed. That house needs to be shuttered. So 2 houses, crazy survival. Let's look at a couple of online resources that might help us explain a little bit about how these houses survive. So first off, there's a organization called wildfireprepared.org. This is the sister organization to the Fortified program. If you're in the Southeast, if you're in the East Coast, if you're in a hurricane zone, you're familiar with Fortified. I've made some videos about them. It's doing some things during construction, and they're really smart to make sure when the crap hits the fan, no pun intended or pun intended, that your house is going to survive. The hard part about hurricanes versus fire, though, is hurricanes, you can hunker down at your house, and typically what's happening to your neighbors is not affecting you. With wildfire, especially in this urban setting, what's happening to your neighbor's house is absolutely going to affect you. And having these houses so close to one another gives you a lot less ability to withstand. And again, though, it is possible, based on that house that we saw that Greg built. This is just a general kind of here's what you can do. And there's a lot of good information on this site. If you actually live in California or Oregon, there is a designation program which I believe will give you an insurance discount if you kind of follow their program. They have kind of a regular program and they have a plus program for building. And they have a standard that you can download that has some fabulous information on it. I believe the link is right here, how to prepare your house checklist. And if I were to kind of summarize this, there's really kind of 3 or 4 areas that you need to think about. And funny enough, as I was doing my research on this, I just thought, you know, I'm going to see what ChatGPT says about this. And I read this ChatGPT before I started reading through all this info, but this is kind of a good summary, which is, of course, what ChatGPT is good for us. And Chat says on a summary, look, we've got this immediate zone, 0 to 5 feet. We saw that in the CAL FIRE video. If we take care of the first 5 feet and make it non-combustible, gravel, rocks, stone mulch, remove all plants, keep everything clear of flammable debris, we're going to be in much better shape. And then we've got this kind of intermediate zone, you know, 5 to 30 feet. If we take care of that zone and really think about that zone to be as sparse as possible, low-cut grass, get rid of shrubbery that could burn, that sort of thing, then we can go to the next zone, which is the extended zone. And thinking back to specifically the house that Greg built, this is where we might have a perimeter defense system. And as we talk about that, you know, I learned about something new that I didn't know about. There is actually a company based out of Australia that makes specific meshes to be used for retrofit or new construction for this defensive purpose. And this could be used in perimeter fences, or I'm going to get back to ventilation in a minute, but what you're looking at here is a stainless steel mesh that's been powder coated. They make it in a couple different varieties, but I would say that this 1/8 inch variety is not giving you as much protection as the 1/16 inch opening variety. And what this is going to do is actually reject like 98% of the embers that might go against this. They sell this in all kinds of different roll sizes, but let's say if you had a roll of this that was 5 foot tall by 50 feet, you could wrap your perimeter fence with this, and now you've got a 5 foot tall wall that any blowing embers, when they hit this, the energy is not going to get through and would really reduce the possibility of ignition in your yard and ultimately in your house space. The more common use, I would say, for this, though, is things like this. They sell it with frames already, so you could really easily retrofit the ventilation on your house if you have a typical vented house. They also sell it in a bunch of different roll sizes. I think they make it in like a 7-inch roll, a 12-inch roll, 24, that sort of thing. You can learn more at wildfiredefensemesh.com. I met with the founder of the company, really neat guy. He's actually in LA today meeting with people. You can buy it online, and I suspect there's some retail outlets that will have that as well. Let's keep going on the list there. So besides the kind of perimeter defense, we need to think about fire-resistant building materials. So start with the roof. We got to have a Class A building material on the roof. Believe it or not, though, you can get an asphalt shingle that is Class A rated. I just put one on a house that I built. Several manufacturers make it. Mine happen to be from Atlas. And a lot of them will have both a wind and a fire rating. So think about a Class A roof. You also need to think about your fire-resistant underlayment. And of course, metal and tile are that much better in my mind than asphalt shingle. My house actually has a metal roof. Remember the Monopoly framing we talked about though a second ago at the house that Greg built? I really think that he was thinking about fire resistance for another way, in that there's no big valleys in here that could catch leaves, although he does have a flat porch here. I'm not sure if there was any possibility of leaf or debris holding here, but that's one thing I like about Monopoly framing and kind of simplifying your roof design. For instance, my personal house, if you were to look at the house that I built for my family not too long ago, I completed a couple years ago, metal roof, but there's not a single valley. I have that same A-frame Monopoly style. Check out my videos to see why I did and how I did put overhangs on the house. I'm in a totally different climate though, so I have exterior insulation, I've got overhangs because I've got more than double the amount of rain that they get in LA. In general, one of the benefits of LA as a climate is it's pretty mild. I mean, it's hardly ever 20 degrees colder or 20 degrees hotter than 70 degrees. They also get less than 20 inches of annual rainfall. So this is not a really harsh climate when it comes to temperature and rainfall. So it makes a lot of sense not to have overhangs, and of course not having that ventilated roof made all the difference. That's another key point that I wanted to make on this video. And let's jump into that ventilation as we think about it. I mean, ventilation on the house is a major source of ignition for a lot of these houses, but also just for regular old houses in neighborhoods, even if there isn't a wildfire risk. For instance, in the last couple years here in Austin, Texas, I can think of 2 houses that burned all the way to the ground. That one was a chimney fire issue, or a chimney spark issue. This is my personal chimney, and I've got a spark arrestor up here. If I didn't have the spark arrestor and I'm burning wood here, you would see quite a bit of red embers coming off here. And one of my neighbors, I don't know how many years ago, 3, 4, or 5 years ago, had a chimenea in their backyard. Are you familiar with that? You know what I'm talking about when I say that? It's it's like a little clay pot that you burn wood in the backyard. Well, they had one of these going. They went to bed and the fire was not out yet at, let's say, 10 o'clock. They went to bed an hour later. The entire roof was in flames, and they got out with their lives, but the house was absolutely lost, burned to the ground. A spark out of the chimenea went into the soffit vent and lit the roof, basically the attic on fire, house totally gone. Had they had something like this over those vents, that would have prevented that. And so this is something that I actually am going to think about using in all of my houses, even if I'm not in a wildfire zone. This would absolutely prevent that from happening. We could also use this in our rain screen areas. If we have a ventilated siding, we could use this in a U shape and prevent embers from the bottom or from the top coming up. This seems like a really cheap defensive method for keeping those embers out of those ventilated spaces. The last thing I want to mention on this other house, though, or the house that Greg built that was not, that survived those fires, there was some talk online about whether this was a passive house. Did it have exterior insulation, let's say a rock wool type insulation that would be more fire resistant? And Greg commented online, no, this was not a passive house. We certainly used some principles from passive house, but this was not a rated house. It had no exterior insulation, again, because his climate was pretty mild. But he did specifically mention that it had a 1 hour wall rated assembly. And I had to look that up because I actually didn't know exactly what that meant. What that really means is that on the inside of the house, you've got 5/8 Type X gypsum wallboard. And on the outside, you have some type of 5/8 Type X gypsum sheathing as well, something like a dense glass gold, or USG makes some as well, a fiberglass facing that's a cement or not cement based, it could be cement based, or gypsum based sheathing on the outside. Can be just regular old standard 2x4s, nothing special there. And then of course you can use a more flame and fire resistant type of insulation, like a mineral wool, a rock wool insulation would certainly help. But that 1 hour rated firewall, Greg also felt like was a big help on this house. And you saw in the video, he mentioned specifically he had stucco down his 2 side walls, brick, fiber cement. These are all Class A fire resistant materials. And again, I think he might actually have had wood on the front there, but that wood was in a more concealed place that wouldn't have direct flame upon it. And he was really smart about that defensible space. Another thing that I want to mention is we talked about things being outside the house, a broom leaning against the house, combustible deck furniture, things like that. But don't forget, decks are a huge source of ignition. When I visited the Marshall fires in Colorado a couple years ago, the house that I visited that was being rebuilt, they specifically mentioned how their deck was a big source. Attached to the house, burnable, ignited the deck, ignited the house. That's something to really be thinking about, is how can we move to a fire-wise deck? Class A deck materials, think about PVC decking. The guys at AZEK and TimberTake make a lot of Class A materials. We also could use things like rolls of this around the perimeter of the deck underneath to make sure that embers are not getting into that space. Or if it's an elevated deck, you got to keep that clean and think about Class A building materials and potentially even metal deck framing. There's a lot that can be done on decks to keep them from igniting, but we need to really pay attention to that. Let's see, let's talk resources real quick and let's wrap the video. I did a little research and I don't have my full research done, but there is some coatings that can be applied. No relation to these guys. Someone I saw on a Reddit thread mention these guys. So there are some things that could be done on the outside of the house. I also, if you look at the Delta Millworks website, these guys sell wood to a lot of wildfire areas. And they have this fire codes for exterior wood cladding diagram and discussion on their website. And they tell me that they're actually in the works for a Class A rated wood exterior product. So that's something to keep in mind. You could call those guys for more information. They're a great local company. But in terms of resources, let me show you a couple other things besides what I showed you. So wildfireprepared.org. Another great one is the NFPA. What does that stand for? The National Fire Protection Association, maybe? I can't remember. But this video in particular, I'll link to it in the description, is a fabulous video with some really, really good kind of advice. Let's actually watch just a minute or two so that you can kind of see what they're talking about. But I really liked how in this video they actually talk about firebrands, which they call burning embers. They call them firebrands. And let's actually watch a second of this. This is pretty cool, isn't it, how they figured out how to shoot those burning embers at a house? I have no idea how they did that, but I would love to see this test someday. I think this might have been at the IBHS, which is the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety. They're the ones that started the Wildfire Safe and the other organization I mentioned. Anyways, I don't want to watch the whole thing for you, but I will link to it. That's definitely worth 13 minutes. I think my big takeaway here is, look, builders should dig into how to do a better job on this fire resistance, even if you're just in the middle of a city, in the middle of a regular urban or rural setting, and you're not worried about wildland, urban interface, or wildfires in general. But let's end by saying, gosh, our hearts are with those affected in LA. I thought about this scripture. This is from Psalm 34:18. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Our hearts are with you guys. Our prayers are with you. I think that the rebuilding efforts really need some careful thought. I think we need to think about our codes and what we're doing when we do rebuild. Let's not make the same mistakes we did in the 50s, 60s, 70s when we built houses and we had kind of short-term thinking, or maybe we just didn't know any better. You know, our motto here at the Build Show is know better, build better. And so I wanted to make this video for builders like me that are not dealing with this every day to kind of get a sense for what happened and what we could do. I hope you learned something, but please dig into the links. I'll have links for all three of those organizations in the description below. I think it'd be worth your time to get out there. That being said, guys, hit that subscribe button. New content here, of course, every Tuesday and every Friday. We'll see you next time on The Build Show. I cannot believe I didn't say something about the brave men and women who have been literally working like 24-hour, I've heard like 48-hour shifts from the fire departments locally and abroad. It looks like we've got Mexican firefighters and Canadian firefighters and probably half of California's firefighting forces there. Gosh, amazing, brave heroes. Thank you for all that those guys have done. I mean, I don't care what side of the political aisle you're on. I don't care what religion or faith you are or don't have. When it comes to loss of life, loss of houses and families, that's what unites us. And my hope is that this disaster will unite America with the desire to build better houses in the future. Thanks for joining me on this special Build Show, guys.